Digging through the past is not that hard. Rusted cars and broken shards, mining memories in an old wrecking yard. Echoes of laughter, whispers of pain. Time stands still, but the memories remain in this graveyard of steel. Welcome to the Wrecking Yard. I'm Jerry Wayne Longmire, and y'all are presumably still y'all. All are welcome here in the Church of Internal Combustion. We just ask that you show up with an open heart. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. I had to sprint back in the house and back out here about 3 times because, boy, just not doing this after a week got me out of practice. I forgot about half my crap. This is a, we got everything working, cooking with propane now. This is the last episode in this particular format. Next week will just be a collection of stories that I forgot about all the other cars and times we talked about before we swap over to the new format. No matter, I sit there and I write these things down and then I just forget stuff. And then after the episode airs, while I'm watching it with y'all about half the time, like, oh man, I forgot to tell them about this, and so that's what we're going to do next week. Next week's just going to be a collection. We'll call it the Wrecking Yard Addendum. You know what I mean? Wrecking Yard Repeat. We'll find some cool little name for it. And that'll be the end of the first season. And we'll have made it. Today's car is another car I owned while other stuff we've talked about is going on. I had this little Honda Accord for maybe a year or so. And I got it right after the Contour, right after Ford Contour and the Bronco. But we'll get into all that. Right after we thank our sponsors for bringing the Wrecking Yard to fruition today. First up, our buddy Daniel Pulliam at the Pulliam Training Stables. You can go to their website, is thetrainedhorse.com. It's owned and operated by Daniel. It's like a mom and pop shop, Decades of experience training horses and instructing people, offering lessons to all ages, private one-on-one lessons, no groups, which that's what you want. If you're spending the money to get good lessons, you don't want it to be a group lesson. You want somebody that's there to teach you, and that's what Daniel does. They got a custom lesson program for children and adults with disabilities, horse training for horses of all levels and ages. I know I've mentioned to y'all before I have a neurodivergent son, and kind of think my other kids sometimes, but the work I've seen people do with people with various disabilities and equine training is the only thing that softens my view on horses, because they do seem to really help a lot of people. So, man, make sure you check him out, thetrainedhorse.com. And, of course, our good buddies at the Everyone Racers podcast. That's a podcast. It's about all forms of endurance racing, from amateur to whatever, they just cover it all. But these guys all race. They all race. I keep saying guys. One of them's a lady. They all race, and they're all hilarious, and they've all got great stories about it, and I've enjoyed listening to them. In fact, they gave me a new phobia while I was doing all my traveling for the Christmas tour, because Middle Ward told a story about a deer coming through the windshield of an F-body and taking a dude out, feet first, And I was whipping my way, I was leaving Meridian. I was going to Walnut Springs to go to the John Clay Wolf show, and I never seen so many deer in my life. I don't know where you hunters are, but y'all need to be posted up along 167 on the way in from Meridian to Walnut Springs. It ain't sporting, but you'll get your limit. But anyways, check out the Everyone Racers podcast. I love them. It's become one of my favorite listens. I have not done any driving, thankfully, in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. But I'll be back on them the minute I hit the road here in a week or two. All right, man. Everyone Racers podcast. Do. Here's how to break a shit box. No, I don't know. They probably got a better theme song than that. Woo! Happy New Year, Wainers. Against all odds, we made it to 2025. Hell, I'm proud of us. I'm sure people lost money on me making it this far. Probably some of you too. I hope that y'all had a nice Christmas celebration, a Christmas season, if you celebrate it. If you don't, still hope you had a nice couple weeks there or whatever. I took a week off because honestly, I'm sure you noticed by the last podcast, I was a little burnt. I was burnt out. Uh, it happens. I'm one of those people that I love to work, and especially if I'm focused on something and something I'm passionate about. And between the Christmas tour, which I'm very passionate about, it's one of my favorite things to do every year, and writing this opus for the last 29 weeks, plus writing my other content, I was fried when I came off the road on the 22nd. So I just took a week and I just enjoyed Christmas with my family, and I didn't worry about anything online while my numbers just dropped at a staggering rate. And honestly, it was glorious. Sometimes you just gotta unplug. Even this is my business, and sometimes I still gotta unplug from it and just. I feel renewed in the spirit, if you will, Daddy. See, I can't even say that without going into him. In the spirit, if you will, Daddy. Yeah, I feel renewed, man. I had a good Christmas. Kids had a good Christmas. I ain't bragging, but last year was the first year I ever made money doing comedy. And not like I've been paid to do comedy for 20 years, but last year was the first year that I didn't just break even or even take a little bit of a hit. Last year was the first year that honestly I paid every one of our bills and then some, and did a whole lot extra with just comedy money. So that's a big achievement for me. It took 20 years to pull off, but hey, better late than never. Um, so it was a good week. It was a good week for me to just unplug and kind of think about it. The ending of this thing was it's a lot to contemplate, and I needed a minute to sit on it and just think about where I was going to go with this episode and the next. Cool thing is I was going to Walnut Springs and I was going to just do a radio appearance on the John Clay Wolf show. And John Clay Wolf calls me up when I'm at rehearsal in Waco the day before. He says, "Hey man, I'm stuck in a snowstorm. I can't get to my radio equipment. Why don't you just run the whole radio show?" And so I did. I went and stepped in some impossibly large shoes of a man that I have a great deal of respect for, who runs a top-notch radio program week in, week out. And I sat at his chair and I sat at his desk and did my best to do some flimsy sort of attempt at his job. And while I did not leave that show with any hopes for doing radio's not my thing. I say that, you never know. But I've never had any desire to do radio, especially morning radio. I'm not, morning ain't my type of shit. But what did happen was I left there inspired. And all these ideas I had for the new format of the Wrecking Yard podcast, I threw out the window. And on the way to Grapevine from Walnut Springs, I compiled a list of ideas with my little audio notes while I was driving. And then after the Grapevine shows and a little celebration at the end of the tour and driving home to my sweet family, I compiled the rest of the notes. And when I got here Sunday night on the 22nd, after the podcast aired, me and my lady Rachel, we sat on the porch and had a copious number of drinks and compiled the new Wrecking Yard podcast. And I think you guys are going to be very happy about it. I thought long and hard about if I was going to have a co-host or let somebody sit in with me. I am going to do some guests, but it's going to be like a monthly thing, one guest a month. I don't want to try to put that together every week. But I've had some characters I've been working on for a while. We're going to include them in the new podcast. And I thought and who I would have as my new co-host, and I couldn't think of anybody better for the job than Papa. So Papa is going to basically be my new co-host on the Wrecking Yard podcast, and we've arranged something fun for him. We're gonna have a way you guys will just have to comment and ask it. It's going to be a ask Papa anything. Ask Papa to teach you how to do something. Ask Papa what he thinks about something. Anything like that. Now, Papa doesn't really know how the internet works, so what happens is you guys will comment your questions and such, and just put a little at the beginning of your comment, hey, question for Papa or whatever, or at the end of your comment, hey, a question for Papa. And I have rigged up a fake landline, and I'm gonna have him answer it, and I'll provide the voice to your question or commentary, and I'll change the voices up so you don't know it's me. And we'll give Papa a hard time. We'll have a fun little segment on the new Wrecking Yard podcast. So I'm really excited. That's just a little teaser about one of the things we're doing. We've got a lot of great segments lined up, and still the stuff you love, the stories, and just the down home talking. But we're gonna add a little zaniness to it, because that is my way. So I'm really excited about that, and I hope you guys are excited too. I know it's hard to say goodbye to something. People are starting to find out that truck astrology is coming to an end, and they're disappointed. And I get it, like all good things must end. But the production schedule of trying to keep up with truck astrology and do the other things I want to do is they're just butting heads, and something's got to go. And so truck astrology is going to take a back seat for a little while. I'm not going to tell you it's gone forever. I'm just telling you it's taking a back seat for a little while I focus on some other things. And the podcast is going to require, dadgum, you think I ought to hire a pest control guy, get in here and get rid of these bugs. Anyways, so I know nobody likes the end of things. I get it. I'm the same one. I'm still mad they canceled Outsiders. I'm still mad. Supernatural's over after what was it, like 30 seasons or something. So nobody likes it when things end. It's like getting to the end of a good book. You got to figure out what comes next. You got to find that next good book. But we're going to find that together. And there's still a million stories. There's a million stories trapped in this old aging Rolodex of a brain I got. Let's get started, though. Let's jump into it. First of all, I'm going to show off one of my Christmas gifts. Rachel got me this. It is a cocktail smoker kit, and I have never in my life felt the need for a smoked cocktail until I tried one of these, and it's just fantastic. And I'm going to show you guys how it works a little bit here tonight. So, yeah, it's got all kind of wood chips in it. I was surprised by the wood chip I turned out to like the most. Honestly, has pecan, peach, cherry, apple, oak, beech, sakura, which is like some kind of cherry blossom type shit, pear. Anyway, this neat little kit comes with this little wooden disc, right? You put your little screen in there. And then I'm going to use the beech. That has become my favorite one. I did not suspect the beech would be my favorite. I thought it was going to be pecan. Turns out the beech is the one for me. And they give you this fancy little spoon to make you feel kind of floofy. A little floofy. But in the spirit, not of a resolution or such, but I went to the doctor and not all my numbers are great, and I need to slow down some of my imbibing, and that's okay. I ain't got to quit, so. But it's also, I got a little carried away over the Christmas season, and I felt like I was having a little too much, and so in an effort to slow down and make sure I enjoy each drink just a little more. You know what I mean? Sometimes that can happen when you're on the road. Anyway, you just set that little disc right on top of there, just like that. And they give you this little butane torch, and then you just sort of I don't know if you can see, but it's filling the glass. Man, the beach surprised me how good it is. It is such a good flavor to add to whiskey. Would have never guessed that. But I used to like beach beer a lot when I was younger. There you go, baby. Just let that sit just a little bit. Let that smoke sit on that whiskey for just a minute. And I think that's some fancy, ain't that some diamond gem fruit? I never in my life would have asked for something like that, but she just finds neat little things that she knows I'm gonna like. And of course, fire and whiskey and wood, you can't go wrong. Smoke, I smoke everything. Why shouldn't I smoke my whiskey? This little Honda we're gonna talk about today, man. It was a 1992 or 91 Honda Accord. It was integral to Rach and I's survival as a young couple. Uh, in the early days, it really was. Um, y'all know, I told y'all Pete got fired. After Pete got fired from the Laugh Stop for embezzling, Rachel got a big promotion. She became the full GM of the club, and I couldn't hang out at the club as much anymore. Now my girlfriend's running the joint, so I needed to go find me another place to make some income so it didn't look shady. And I went to work for my buddy David, who talked a lot about David Doig. David Doig at the time owned that A Plus transmission shop there in Washington. And we had become really good friends because he had to rebuild my Contour transmission like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And I had spent a lot of time hanging out in his shop and just bullshitting with him. And we got to be pretty tight. We started hanging out, you know. And he offered me a job as a shop manager. Now, y'all have never heard me mention being a shop manager before. So, that means I didn't have no experience. Whew, that is nice. That beach smoke almost has a little mint to it or something. Whew, just touch it down that whiskey real nice like. David, David's helped me out a lot in life. I've learned a lot from David. He hired me as a shop manager. He said, "Well, you don't need no experience. Anybody can be a shop manager." I was basically like the production manager, and I was terrible at it. I know he nearly fired me a number of times, and he probably should have 10 more. But he kept me around anyways. I made him laugh, and I was a semi-functional seat holder. And David, pretty much, he's one of those guys that runs the whole show anyways. He doesn't need anybody else, but hooked me up with a job. It wasn't a bad little gig. I got 10% commission on shop work, which, any given week, $500-800, something like that. Pretty decent. It was, normal amount of hours. I'd go in the morning and meet him at the shop and work all day with him, and it was good. It was good. David ignited the car guy in me again. He was kind of dead at that point. Remember, I tell you, I had the Contour. I fixed the Contour, but I've always fixed cars, but I haven't always been. There's been a lot of times in my life where my love for automobiles took a back seat, and it was in the back seat. Me and Rachel just got together, and we were basically in that fun new love sex honeymoon that goes on when you're in that. But David ignited the car guy in me. He had so many projects. He had this cool ass little RD Yamaha Cafe Racer, and he had a bobber, old British bobber, and he had a couple Harleys. And well, he's not a Harley guy, but he's a motorcycle guy. And he had a WS6, whatever that TA is that come out in the early 2000s. He had one of those, and he's got, Lord knows, I couldn't tell you how many cars he's got. He's got them scattered all over hell and creation. He's got all kind of projects going all the time. It was fun to be around, man. It ignited that love for doing that kind of thing in me again. And he loves junking just as much as I do. That man loves to go to a swap meet. That is the penny pinchingest swap meet. Oh boy, he's a terror at a swap meet or an antique sale. And an eBay monster, boy. I bet David Doig could have gave Robert Rabbit Pitts a run for his money in real time. I guarantee you, them two would have been like the thieves of the East Coast, man. It was David's got some stories. David's done some junking. He's a cool dude. A little younger than me, not much. One night, he'll probably argue this fact with me. He talked me into buying a '68 Ford Bronco. We drove to College Station and looked at it. The guy had painted this Ford Bronco John Deere green and the wheels yellow because that's the kind of stupid shit that they do in College Station. And that thing was a basket case. We loaded it up on his truck and brought it back to loaded up on his trailer, brought it back to my house. And I think that's how I paid him back for it. When I sold the Contour, I paid him. I think we paid like $2,000, $2,500 for it, something like that. Then I had a Bronco. Yeah. And then I'm probably not even probably just a week or two after that. I was looking on Craigslist while I was sitting in the transmission shop and looking at old Japanese motorcycles, and I had been looking at this one. It was this cherry little 1977 Yamaha 750 XS, and I seen it pop up on Craigslist, and the guy was wanting about $500 for it, and it was clean. He said it hadn't run in a while, been sitting in the garage. And I said, boy, I always like them triples. That might be something I need, you know. Me and David kind of back and forth about it. He likes it too. Boy, the next day it's not on Craigslist anymore. I missed my opportunity. Somebody got it, you know. Well, come 3 or 4 days, and I'm scanning Craigslist like I do in the morning. It's just something you do to kill time. And that old Yamaha, that same Yamaha, same pictures, pops back up. Different phone number, different email address now. Now the guy just wants $400 for it. It definitively does not run in the ad this time. Not it used to run, anything. It does not run. Me and David drive over there in his pickup truck and look at the bike. It's got good compression. It wants to turn. It's trying to turn over. It's got a good battery on it. It's trying to turn over. I said, man, I'm game. So I give the guy, I think I talked him down to 350 or something like that. And me and David loaded that heavy son of a 50 up in the back of his pickup, and we took it to his house. We took the carbs apart, and they're kind of a pain. Those are 3 sets of carbs and everything. Of course, they're full of air filter material and cockroaches and whatever else. And we cleaned them carbs out and all that good stuff, and we put it back together. And lo and behold, that old motorbike fired right up, boy. It was ready to go. I rode it home from David's house that night. I lived in Oak Forest, and David lived in Shepherd Oaks, which are 2 neighborhoods right beside each other in like old Houston off 610. And where he lived in Shepherd Oaks was really close to where I lived in Oak Forest. Like we were really maybe a block or 2 away from each other. And so he followed me home, and I rode that motorbike home. I had me a little Yamaha, you know. That wasn't the last bit of work I had to do. I ended up having to really rebuild those carburetors, of course, go through it. And it lost reverse like a lot of those Yamahas do. So you have to take the transmission apart, put your big old flat washer in there and put it back together. And you get, not reverse, second gear. And those little Yamahas are real bad about it. Put your flat washer in there, put her back together. Yeah, you got second gear. Internet's a wonderful thing. Yeah, that's the kind of crap me and him were doing, man. And of course, then it became a steady, I wanted to customize the motorcycle, make it a little mine. I put some control arms on it and stuff like that, Ford controls on it. Oh, in the early days of eBay back then, boy, you could get just about anything made from any CNC machinist out there. So I was getting custom plates made and all kind of stuff. Put a custom seat on it. And I think it was blue when I got it, and I painted it black because what's smarter than a black motorcycle? Why shouldn't you make the thing you're hurtling on towards somebody's rear end be harder to see? You know? Yeah. The Bronco mostly sat. We did the brakes on it, and I started rebuilding the steering column on it. It was a 3 on the tree, 302, but the steering column, just everything was wore out on it. It was going to need I was going to have to replace every part in that steering column. Oh, engine run pretty strong, but mostly I couldn't afford to do much to it. I had a new girl. I was trying to, we were living together, and I was helping pay bills, and um, trying to get some money together so we could get married. I mean, she didn't know that I was trying to do that yet, and also still, trying to have enough money to go do my gigs and all that kind of stuff. And between comedy and work, I didn't have much time to work on the Bronco either. And when I was off, I didn't. When you're in a new relationship, you don't be out there working on a damn car. Maybe some of y'all do, but that wasn't for me. We were having fun, man, being together and learning how to live together. Some of it was not fun, but most of it was a really good time. And Rach worked so many hours at the comedy club that if she got off, we were off. We went and had fun and goofed off. And sometimes we did road trips so I could do comedy gigs and all that kind of stuff. She had the Mazda, so I didn't have to worry about her. So I started a junk collection phase. This is also about the time I think I told y'all she's coming home from her dad's house one night in Huntsville. I got a surprise, and I thought it was going to be a sexy surprise, and then she showed up with this stupid dog, this little Jack Russell named Tina that her dad had trained. And I don't want no damn dog, 'cause dogs don't live long enough. They just break your heart. But Rachel's working all the time. Within just a few days, that dog was a shop dog. Tina was out in the shop with me every day working on stuff. Our house also needed a lot of work. We were living in a very old house that the landlord had not kept up at all, and we were doing all kind of shit to it to make it a little more livable space. And regardless of even the cars, and even when I get the Honda in here, my real daily driver was that Yamaha XS 750. I was on the Outlaw Dave show, and so I rode that to the radio station, do Outlaw Dave stuff, and I used to go to he did all these biker rallies, events, and stuff, and so I would ride that old Yamaha to the biker rallies, and some guys would give me some crap about it. Most of the old heads were pretty cool because they just like motorcycles, and they didn't have no beef with me being on this old beat to death Japanese motorcycle. Some of them just thought it was cool. They remembered having one, that kind of stuff. So some point I decided I'm not going to do anything with this Bronco, and it's in the way. It's a big old chunk of money I got sitting in the driveway, and I ain't using it, and it's just in the way, and it's an ugly son of a 50. Who paints a Bronco John Deere green with John Deere yellow wheels? I mean, that's just the most A&M dumb shit. But I bought the damn thing, at night. See, when I tell you don't ever buy a used car at night, that's another one I bought at night. Don't ever buy a used car at night. And not that I don't end up taking a screwing on it, actually, because I didn't put hardly anything in it. And by the time I got ready to sell it, all of a sudden those things had become really hot, and everybody wanted one, even a basket case. And I put that thing on eBay and let the bidding commence. And I told them, steering column's jacked up. This is not a running driving. I mean, it cranks up and you can drive it, but and it's got brakes now, but this is not a run and drive. This vehicle needs some work. It needs to be restored. That's what it really needed. I put it on the eBay, boy. They came in droves to bid on that Bronco. I couldn't believe when it passed $2,500. I was happy already. When it passed $3,000, I was ecstatic. Now I was getting a little something back, and I think it ended up going for $4,300, $4,500. Of course, that vehicle's worth 10 times that now. No, not really. But I could get more for it now. But the dude out in California bought it, and he hired an 18-wheeler shipper to come pick it up. But the guy couldn't get in my neighborhood, and the only time I ever actually drove the Bronco was to load it on that guy's freaking truck. And it was an adventure, buddy, because I was holding the steering column and trying to shift on it. The steering column was doing this, and I had to drive it out to the end of my road and then go down. I lived off Althea and TC Jester. I had to go down TC Jester and do a U-turn and come back and get lined up with Homeboy's truck. And then it wouldn't fit on the bottom because it sat a little too tall. So I had to put the ramps down so I could drive it up on top of that Sun 50. He couldn't drive a standard, so he couldn't load it. So I had to drive that thing up there. Didn't have no emergency brake. I get it on top of this thing. I remember it was windy that night, and that truck was just doing this. I was on top of that truck in this Bronco, just to, woo, making buttons in the seat, baby. I had to hold my foot on the brake and throw it in gear, hold my foot on the brake while homeboy climbed up there and strapped it down. And then he had to help me climb down, and then I had to walk back to my house. And then the dude that bought that thing got mad as hell at me. We got, man, the steering column's all messed up there. Like, all that stuff was in the ad. And he tried to come back on me through eBay, and eBay, of course, backed me up on it. It was like, no, it was all in the ad. You're a fool. You bought a broken down piece of shit truck for too much money. I bet he got his money back out, to be honest with you. Those things did pretty good. That was a wild time living in that little house, man. It's just we were learning how to live together, but stuff was happening. We weren't always making a lot of money. Rachel was doing better; she got a promotion, but we still had stuff happening. And I remember we came back from a trip, and my electricity was cut off. I was like, "Oh shit! I forgot to pay the electric bill." I wasn't good at stuff like that. High level administration function. That's not my type of shit. In one, I'll forget it. I will find everything in the world to think about besides the light bill. Wasn't I didn't have the money, just I forgot to pay it. And I also hate giving people money, especially back then when I didn't have much. And we came back in, and the lights were out, and it was like Super Bowl Sunday. And I had this electrician buddy. He wasn't even a buddy. He was just a dude that came to some of my comedy shows. I met him after one of my comedy shows. He gave me his business card. And he was this Mexican dude. And I called him up, and he was drunk at a Super Bowl party. I said, hey, man, is there any way to get my electricity back on tonight? I've already called the electric company, and I've already paid it over the phone, but they're saying they can't come out till like 3 days. And that sucks, man. I just want to get my electricity turned back on. Is there a way to do it? And he goes, all right, man, you can't tell anybody I'm telling you this. It's been there 20 years. I think I can tell y'all. And none of it really works this exact way anymore. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already went out there and tried to take the electrical meter apart and figure it out myself. And all I had succeeded in doing was taking that little glass dome piece off and exposing the inner workings of the old analog, with a little disc and all that shit, and electrical meter. And I had seen some screws in there that you could use a flathead screwdriver on. So I had Jimmy worked with them screws and stuff, and none of those things had made the electricity turn back on. So I decided I should put the glass dome back on, put it all back together, and then call this guy. And I called him, and he's like, oh, man. He said, don't tell anybody I'm telling you this, but it's really simple. He said, just take that lock ring off and grab the whole meter, that cylindrical part, open the box, and just unplug it. It'll have 4 prongs on the back, and on them prongs, there'll be some little plastic sleeves. Just pull them plastic sleeves off, plug it back in, your power will be back on. Lo and behold, I plug that Sun 50 back in. Our power was back on, baby. We were lightning time. We were ready to have a good time. Uh, Funny little side effect to me taking that dome apart and screwing with all them screws. Something I adjusted or messed with made that little thing spin a lot slower than what it used to could. And for years, not years, but for at least a good year and a half before Centerpoint come out and put a smart meter on the house, we were getting light bills that were like -$8. They were sending us money every. We had a credit in our account for like $300 or $400 because our light bill literally was be like -25 cents to -$8 every month somehow because of the way I had screwed inadvertently tinkered with this electric meter. And I used that trick for years, man, when I was doing remodeling and working on new houses and working on all kind of stuff, like especially old houses where the power had been turned off. Boy, that's the way they turned the power off for years. Boy, I turned the power back on in a bunch of houses just so I could plug in tools and stuff. Now, I don't recommend you do that. And I don't know why I don't recommend you do that other than you might burn some shit down. But I never did, and got a lot of free power over the years. I'm sure now with the smart meters, they can turn that on and off from the truck, and it's all. Those are all stories from the past. But boy, it was a good time when you was getting free electricity from Reliant or Centerpoint. I don't remember who. I started looking around. I was working in the shop, but I started looking around Craigslist for little cheap cars. And I knew, we used the Mazda for a lot of road trips for my comedy stuff, and Rachel would go with me, but her schedule was getting more busy, and her duties at the club were requiring more of her, and I had some long travel gigs coming up, and I needed another little Hyundai accent, a little Ford Contour, a little something, you know. And David comes in the office one day. He goes, "Hey man," he said, "If you're just looking for a little cheap car," he goes, "I got this little '91 Honda Accord. I got to go repo." And I said, "What's wrong with it?" And he said, "Well, no." He said, "This lady brought this little '91 Honda Accord in, and we rebuilt the transmission on it and put new CV joints in it. And we gave her a payment plan with really cheap payments, and she's paid on it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and she quit paying on it, and we called her about it, and she said that something's come up in her life, and that she's abandoning the car where she lived, but she couldn't get the car to start." David said, "If you want," he said, "I wasn't even going to screw with it." He said, "But I'll go pick it up, bring it over here, and I'll sell it to you for what she owes," which was about $300. I said, "Man, let's do that." So he went. I think I went with him. We picked the car up, and uh, sure enough, couldn't get it to start. We pulled it back over to the shop, and it just turned out to be a battery. But I think this woman had fallen on hard times, and she couldn't get it together, and uh, she wasn't even at the place where we went. They said they hadn't seen her in a while, so just it ended up needing a battery. So we put a battery on it. Little Honda started right up. I said, "Well, I'll be damned." They said, "Yeah, it'd probably be a good little car for you." Now, I'm gonna tell you, this little Honda Accord, it didn't have like a lot of body damage or like dents and stuff like that, but the paint was all. It was originally the maroon brownish color, but there wasn't a shiny spot left on it anymore. It was all faded. The clear coat had peeled. It was just this faded little rusty brown Honda Accord. It was nothing special. Interior was pretty gross. I don't know how many diapers I cleaned out of the back floorboards and other gross crap I had to clean out of the car. The trunk was full of trash. It was it had not been taken care of. The thing stunk to high heaven for a long time. It took a while to get the smells out of that car. But it's a $300 Honda, and let me just tell you this: this is a little lesson you can take from Jerry Wayne, and You can say what a son of 50 I am if you don't believe me, but let me just put this right here. This is just a little money in the bank for you. If anybody ever offers you a Honda anything for less than $300, just go ahead and buy it. Just go ahead and buy it. It's a good buy. You're going to be all right. I mean, unless it's currently on fire. Even then, I think you're probably still coming out ahead. Lord knows I did. Bought that little Honda, and I couldn't get the title done right on it. I couldn't. I didn't either. I didn't have enough money at the time or whatever to do the title swap over. Title swaps in Texas used to be a real pain. They're getting better, but they used to be really difficult. And in some ways, they've made them more difficult if you're being sketchy. But they used to be really difficult. And I didn't get the title done on it. Of course, it had like an expired registration sticker on it, but it wasn't that far out. So I just kept driving. I put some insurance on it, started driving. I will tell you, all of this illegal crap I ever did with cars, I always had insurance on my cars. I don't drive without insurance in Texas because that's the easiest way to go to jail in the world. So you get your car confiscated, you go to jail, and then if you ain't got a good title on the car, you can't even hardly get the car back. So I always put insurance on them. That saved me I think a lot of jail visits. I got pulled over with a suspended license a number of times. The cops were like, well, you got insurance on it. No, you're trying to do the right thing. Being Caucasian probably helped with that too. Uh, but wasn't bad a little car, man. A little Honda had some zip. Yeah, it had some get up and go. It's a fun little car to drive. It's a little four cylinder. What is it, like a 2.4 liter or something? I never did anything to the engine of this Honda while I owned it. Never. Didn't really drive it a lot in the beginning. In the beginning, I still rode my motorcycle everywhere. But if it was a rainy day, I'd drive a Honda over to the transmission shop or whatever. If I had to go get working on something in the house, I had to go get parts, I'd drive a little Honda over. Maybe run over the Kroger. But pretty much everything else I did on my motorbike. I was living my best motorcycle life at that time, and just enjoying riding a motorcycle everywhere I went, which is, I think most people should probably have that experience at some point, those that are capable of handling it. I can't tell you, the Honda did start screwing up on me. It stopped shifting. It wouldn't shift. It just wouldn't shift. It would just stay in first gear. You could manually shift it to second gear and then manually move it up into drive, but it wouldn't shift automatically. And I mean, I hit David up about it. And he says, probably them solenoids on the side of the engine, on the side of the transmission. It's probably got a bad solenoid. Needs a solenoid. He says, I'm sure we probably just put a used solenoid in there or something because we were doing a cheap rebuild for somebody. But David's very much you're never going to learn anything if you don't figure it out yourself kind of dude. I will say that to his credit. He did that with me all the time. You're never going to learn if you don't figure this out on your own. And David knew everything about transmissions, but he wasn't going to tell me crap. He was going to make me figure it out. And once he told me to check those solenoids on the side of the transmission, I got off messing around in there and figured out that the way that little Honda was set up, the thermostat housing was leaking coolant, and that coolant was running right down. There was two wire harnesses that go to the solenoids with the plug and play, the clips plugs, and that coolant was running down and leaking right off in those clips of those wire connections. And I'd like to tell you that I went to the junkyard and spent some time cutting the perfect pigtails to replace those wiring connections. But that's not what happened. What I really did was get some wire and my soldering gun out there and hardwire all those connections and solder them, and then put heat shrink tubing on them and just hardwire all those connections, and then put a big old wad of electric of liquid electrical tape on it and let that dry, and then fix that thermostat housing. After that, the Honda shifted just fine, like a champ, no problems. Honda was driving, shifting son of 50. We had some good times in that house. That house is where um, I may have told y'all before, but me, Steve, and Joey and David on Friday nights, we called it the Committee of Tree Fitty. And the only rule was you had to wear a funny hat. And we would meet over there on Friday nights in my garage, and we would play poker and drink and sometimes chew up some mushrooms and just have us a good ass old time every Friday night. It was a every Friday night I was home, anyways. And I'll try to find a picture. I may have already shown y'all this picture, but I'm trying to find this picture of me and David with our crazy motorcycle helmets and goggles on playing poker. It was just a good time. It was just a little guys' night, and Rachel would be working at the club, and usually on Friday night when she got done, her and her friends would go hang out, that kind of thing. Or if she didn't have to be at the club, her and her friends would go out and go do something fun. She'd come home to find me hammered and a whole ass mess, but not like a bad night, not a sloppy mess, just I'm a little drunk. We accidentally got Tina drunk playing poker in there one night. My brother, Joey, his favorite drink for years and years was rum and coke. Joey was drinking his rum and coke and accidentally spilled his rum and coke. And this little Jack Russell Tina boy, she lapped that rum and coke up just as fast as she could get it up. And we laughed about it, didn't think anything else about it until we had a little heater going. And we noticed every once in a while Tina was sitting in front of the heater. Tina would fall asleep sitting in front of the heater, and she would fall forward and hit the heater and then get mad, wake up and start barking at her. And then she'd come back over there and get warm, and then she'd fall asleep and hit the heater again. Come back and go back after the heater. Woo! Oh, when Rachel got home, I think she was ready to strangle me about that accident getting that poor little dog drunk. That little dog was sick all night. I felt so bad. But it's not like we fed it to her. She just happened to drink it up off the ground. One of my most favorite David stories from that time period is we had ordered this little gazebo, like metal and fabric gazebo, and we put it up on the back deck of this house. And Rachel had strung cafe lights through it, and we had got this cool little table and chairs, and that was our chill spot out there in the evening. One day David comes over to the house, probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And David and his gal Melina, they lived together over in Shepherd Oaks. She was a school teacher, whatever. But this is like a Saturday. He comes over 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, helps me work on a motorcycle a little bit. We hang out in the garage, of course. One thing leads to another. We have a couple of drinks, get bullshitting. Smoking cigarettes, swapping lies. Of course, Rachel gets home from work. Rachel had to go up to the club, do some stuff. She gets home. She wants to have a good time, so she ain't got to work that night. So let's have us a good time, man. We get out there in the gazebo, boy, and we start making some drinks and cooking some stuff on the grill, having us a good ass time, boy. About 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, we are lit. We're out there in that gazebo listening to music, telling stories. By then, my brother Steve come over. All of a sudden, David looks at his watch and goes, "Oh shit, I gotta go." We go, "Is everything okay?" He goes, "Yeah. I told Melina I was going to get a pack of cigarettes." At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he told Melina he was going to get a pack of cigarettes. It was like 11 o'clock at night. He's trying to get in that GMC to go home. I'm not condoning that type of behavior, but it was funny. Oh shit! It reminds me of that Squidbillies episode where old early Kyler goes, "What time is it?" 3 o'clock. Man, I am 2 days and 17 hours late for work. Ah, yeah, David and the cigarettes. We had a good time living in that little house, man. We were Rachel bought a Nintendo Wii, and we would get drunk and play Wii bowling in that living room. And then at some point, we bought our first furniture together. We went to Gallery Furniture. No, that wasn't the Gallery Furniture. Furniture was it? Yes, it was. Rachel had this little green couch. It was her first couch she ever bought. She sold it to Joey and Steve, and we went to Gallery Furniture and bought our first furniture together. And we had this white long couch that went down one wall. Our living room was kind of narrow and long, and then big old love seat over here on this wall, big coffee table. And I had went to Harbor Freight back then. Harbor Freight, they may still got them. Had something that basically could only be described as a telescopic roach clip. Had a little telescoping tool with an alligator clip on the end. I thought that, boy, that's what we need. And I was a very new cannabis smoker at the time. I was just kind of learning about it. And on a day where we didn't have nothing to do, we'd roll some J's and stick it in that little roach clip, light it, take you a couple puffs, stand the roach clip, hand it over to Rachel on the other couch. She'd get hers, and hand me the roach clip, and back and forth we went. Just when you're young and dumb and just having a good time. We got the game Rock Band 2, and we got all the instruments, and um, we formed a band with Joey and Steve, and it was called Giant Tube Sock. And we would play Rock Band 2 to all hours of the night, traveling and gigging together. It was just a fun time, man. It was the beginnings of relationships, they're fun. You don't know shit about each other except for what little you've witnessed, and you're learning how to have a good time together doing all the things you do. And there was going to be plenty of hard times coming. I'm glad we had that good time. I really feel like those times in that little house were very important because it strengthened who we are. And even though we went through some little hard times and stuff, we didn't have a bunch of money. It was good for us. It built who we turned out to be. You can be in love with somebody all you want. You can be attracted to somebody all you want. You can think they're the best thing that ever walked the earth. But if you don't know how to have fun with that person that doesn't involve sex, then you have nothing. You gotta have, eventually. And I'm not saying our passions faded, but you've been married 16 years. It's not all, especially once kids come along, it's not all sex and chasing each other around the bedroom anymore, man. You got to have somebody that you can be friends with. You got to have somebody that you can have fun with. And Rachel's still my favorite person to have fun with. She's my favorite person to watch TV with. She's my favorite person to have drinks with. She's my favorite person to go see live music with. She's my person, man. She's my favorite. Sometimes we just hang out and game. We don't play the same games, but we hang out in the same room and game, and that's enough. And that all started from this little house. Little old 2222 Althea Drive, man. It was a good place for us to start out in. And I had that little Honda I bought from David. That was my little. That Honda was funny, man. It would get some weird stuff, man. It had some. I think it had a little ghost in the machine when it came to the electronics. Some days it wouldn't start. You'd have to go out there and jack with it a little bit, and of course, then it'd start right back up, and it was fine. But I remember one time it started doing this thing. I was coming back from the transmission shop one day, and I went to hit the brakes, and I was like, somebody honked their horn at me. I was like, who's the hell honking at me? Boy, y'all need to calm down. Shit, there wasn't nobody behind me. Yeah, man. I pulled on up, red light, hit the brakes again, horn honking again. I realized it was damn Honda honking the horn. I said, what in the devil is this, man? I drove it down Althea. Every time I drive it down to TC Jester, every time I hit the brake, this horn going off. What in the shit? I said, ma'am, I ain't never run across nothing like this. This is a new one on me. And I got it back in the driveway, and sure enough, man, I got a broom handle, and you could depress the brake. You depress the brake, only the third brake light would come on right over the trunk, and and the horn would honk every time. I think maybe the headlights were blinking too. It was weird as shit. Well, I couldn't figure this out for nothing. I asked David about it. David said, boy, that's a new one on me, man. I can't help you jack with it. And I said, man, I said, I actually know a guy that's a Honda technician. And he's been a Honda technician a long time. I'm going to go talk to him. He's master tech over Honda. So I go talk to this buddy of mine. It's this master tech. He comes over to Jack's car. Boy, I don't know what the hell's going on with this 750. He said, you got a short somewhere, but boy, I couldn't tell you where to start on it. Which is probably code for he didn't want to get into it. I think I owed him some money at the time, so he probably didn't want to get in any deeper with me, and I don't blame him. He did have another buddy who was also a Honda tech that he asked about. That guy come over, looked at it. That guy couldn't figure it out. So we done stumped 2 Honda techs now. Back then, they had this thing on the internet, and they might still got it, and it was called justanswer.com. And you could go in there and you could ask any question, and they would field experts to your question. It was really good in the beginning. It got really crappy after it was a while because it just became about money. But the real beginning, it was like $8. You ask a question, and if it was like a legal question, some lawyer would answer it for you. If it was whatever type of question it was, some tech or expert in that field would answer for you. And I remember this dude. His name was Bill, and he was a General Motors tech, but he'd been a mechanic for auto shop technician, mechanic for 40 something years. He knew he was ASE certified and all, just had all the certifications, everything you want in a daggone mechanic. And Bill was determined to figure out what the problem was with this Honda. Bill was more determined than I was, I think. And every day I get home from work, it took a long time back then. You'd ask your question, and then the tech would think about your question, and then he would respond with some stuff for you to try. And it might be a day before you got a response. And so I would come home from work, and there would be a response on my computer from Bill. And hey, ma'am, do me a favor. Take your voltmeter out there and go out and check this, this, and this. And boy, I mean, I'd done, over the course of about 4 or 5 days, me and Bill, my unseen hero, had dug through this, all for $8. This man went to incredible length. I think in the end he got $15 plus a $10 tip. Incredible links. We spent 4 or 5, maybe 6 days back and forth, him having me test things. And then Bill one day goes, you know what, man? None of this is making sense. Do me a favor. Go out there to that fuse box that's on the fender under the hood. And he said, this is just a hunch. This is just a weird, just do me a favor. Go out there, unbolt that fuse box from the hood, and pick that fuse box up and tell me what the back of it looks like. Shit, all right, that's a weird one. So I go out there, and sure, there's, I don't know, 1 or 2 bolts holding that fuse box on now. Unbolt that fuse box, I turn it over, and everything on the back of that fuse box is melted to shit, and there's black everywhere, and it's just like that damn Ford Condor. You think I'd learned my lesson, but like, just everything was black and burnt, and that fuse box was melted to shit. And I couldn't wait. Boy, I run back in that computer. Dearest Bill. No. Dearest Bill. It's been 2 days since I heard from you. No. I ran back in there. Bill. You ain't gonna believe this. Pull that fuse box. Everything on the back of that fuse box melted to shit. Bill said, all right, man, I know what to do now. And Bill sends me a diagram and it tells me everywhere I need to unhook that fuse box and everywhere I need to unhook one when I go to the wrecking yard and find me another fuse box. And he's like, I promise you, if you do this, it's going to work. He said, I've never seen a fuse box do that on a Honda. He said, but they do it on General Motors all the time. And that's the only reason I told you to go check it. He said, I never heard of it happening on a Honda. I can't imagine. I told you his car had some weird electrical shit. Sure enough, go over to the pick apart, get me another fuse box and harness for a little less than $40, and an hour of me and Joey's time pulling it, and come home and spend about an hour hooking that new fuse box up. And boy, Honda, boom, 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 brakes work, horn work, everything works like it's supposed to again. But yeah, man, old Bill, justanswered.com. Just answered. I don't even know if that one still exists. But in the end, they got kind of crappy, and they'd be hitting you up for like 50 and 60. But it became a big mess at the end. But and I quit using it at some point. But I used that shit for years, man. When I run across a problem I couldn't find, boy, I would use it. But yeah, old Bill, man, dearest Bill, he saw me through. And I think that's the last problem I ever had with that Honda. I'm telling you, I knew dick to that car, you know. And life moved pretty fast. There was. I told y'all the story. I went to Iraq to go do comedy for the military with my buddy Chris Shaw, and while I was over there, Jeff screwed over Rach and gave control of the club over this guy named Don Learned, who didn't do anything but run the club in the ground. And I know when I got back, Rachel was just so happy when I got back from Iraq that I was home and we could kind of deal with things together. And we still, we had some money to burn. We was having a good time. We didn't have no kids yet. We bought a swimming pool, one of those little ones that has an inflatable ring on the top. You just fill it up and it stands itself up. One of those little Walmart specials. We bought a swimming pool, and it was like a Monday. We went to Walmart and bought a swimming pool Monday morning. Came home, filled the swimming pool up, called Joey and Steve, David, everybody knew. And then we started making hurricanes. And we had a hurricane get fired party out there in the backyard in that swimming pool. That was the first night I did whippets. I'd never I missed that part of my adolescence. I never did whippets. My buddy Steve was like, "You never done a whippet before," and so he goes over to some old party store and shows up with all these old things. And I'll never do that again. I did so many whippets. I had the wah-wahs for like 10 minutes, and I'm pretty sure I gave myself permanent brain damage in that swimming pool that night. And I ain't never done that. I got no interest in that. In fact, now sometimes if I'm smoking or whatever, and I cough too hard, I get the wah-wahs again. And it feels like being back in that swimming pool, and I get real unsteady. And like, oh, okay, I got to hold on to something so I don't fall down. Of course, right after I get back from Iraq, we don't have much time for the wedding. Of course, then I get diagnosed with Crohn's disease right before the wedding, and I go in the hospital, and they damn near killed me. And then we get married, and I end up in the hospital a couple more times after that. Every medicine they put me on just about ended me. Uh, yeah, that stuff just ruined me. You know. I've told y'all the story. We got married when we got back to Houston from Vegas. Hurricane Ike was coming. And one of the things I did I thought was real smart was during Hurricane Ike, I pulled our cars right up to the edge of the house like this, thinking in my mind that tree branches would fall, bounce off the roof, and go over the car. So now what happened? The Honda, a big old branch falls, rolls down the roof, knocks a hole in the roof, knocks a hole in the kitchen roof, knocks a hole in the garage roof, and then rolls down and lands right on top of the Honda, dents the roof of the Honda. I think it busted the back glass out, dented the trunk up pretty bad, which sucked. It was a pretty clean car, you know. I mean, paint was crap on it, but the body was straight. One of the things I don't know if I told you about that was so the lady that owned the house, she was a real crackpot. She was really crazy. Her name was Roxanne. She was this redheaded clown lady. She would have the neighbors spying on us, all kind of shit. We had so many. I had this neighbor. His wife would scream and holler at him. We would hear her scream and holler at him in the house, and then he would come in out to the fence and be like, "Hey, can you guys quiet it down?" We'd be like, "Yeah, sure," because he was a cool dude. And we'd quiet it down a little bit, and then he'd go back in the house and she'd scream and holler at him way louder than we had been for like 30 minutes. I felt bad for that guy. I really hope that guy, I hope that guy left that heifer because boy, she made his life miserable. I've never seen a more miserable human being than that poor bastard. But Roxanne would have her neighbors spy on and stuff, and she would call, "Oh, I heard y'all were planting flowers and stuff. Like, you're mad because we're making your house look better? It looked like a piece of shit when we moved into it." But originally, when we moved in that house, she was going to sell it to us. It's going to be a lease for sale type program. Well, she changed her mind halfway through and didn't bother to tell us. So when we got closer to that conversation, she was like, "No, no, I'm going to do that." Well, after Hurricane Ike came and knocked big holes in the roof, we called Roxanne. "Hey, there's a big hole in the kitchen. There's also a giant hole in the garage." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm sitting in." She had this little handyman, this burnout, a surfer guy in Houston, strangely enough, this burnout surfer dude. And she sends him over. There used to be a little surf shop on 43rd Street right behind our neighborhood. And it was kind of I can't remember the name of it, but it was a famous little surf shop and it was open for years. Weird place for a surf shop, but it was open for years. The guy sold skateboards, surfboards, all that kind of stuff. And this burnout little surfer dude comes over and puts some tarps that still leak on top of the roof. And we're like, "Hey, so you got insurance coming to fix the house?" What we finally get out of her is that she canceled the insurance on the house. And she hasn't had insurance on the house in months. So the house ain't getting fixed. So we decided to move. And we found a little place in Spring up off Bridgemont. What is it? Bridgestone neighborhood, Bridgemont neighborhood, Bridgemont Lane, something like that. I've told y'all about that house. And we moved. And that's where we moved, where my neighbor was Skip, old Skip, and my other neighbor was the real life quagmire, old John. Boy, he was cool, man. John was a UPS man. Grew hella tomatoes. And women just streamed in and out of John's door. John, you would see khaki painted women coming in and out of that house at all times of day. John had every woman at UPS coming to see him. A really nice guy. Really, really just a cool dude. He was a comedy fan, actually. I had started driving the Honda pretty much full time by that point because I had a road rage experience on 45 on the Yamaha. So at the time, I had taken that. Remember, I told you I'd taken that little gig. I was working up in Conroe on April Point South with my buddy Steve. Now, I started that job right after the hurricane. And then I just kept working for him because it was good money. And David sold the transmission shop when I was in Iraq. And I came home. I didn't have a job. I had to find a job. Luckily, Hurricane Ike provided one that Property had taken a bunch of damage. Me and Steve were up there fixing the damage left and right. I've been riding that motorcycle to work every morning up and down 45, and that's a long stretch of 45 to ride on a 750 every day. I had her wound out. She did everything she could to keep my big ass moving fast enough to stay in the fast lane. And I was running up 45 north one day, and I was right about oh, what's that road? If you're not Houston, you won't even know, but Cypress Wood. Right there at 45 in Cypress Wood, there's a Home Depot and a Lowe's, and this big old triangle piece of property. And that piece of property used to be where the Goodyear Blimp America was stationed. That was the Goodyear Blimp hangar. And my father-in-law, that I inherited these glasses from, was flight crew on the America Blimp. And that's the only reason I know that. I would drive by Cypress Wood and I think about how the Goodyear Blimp used to be there. And that's where old Pop worked, old Ken. Right about Cypress Wood, I'm running up 45. I'm running good 75, 80 miles an hour. Everything that little old Yamaha's got. And this dude in the F350 comes up, and it was a dark blue 4-door F350. I already hated 4-door. He cuts over the person in the lane next to me, and then he speeds up just enough to be in front of me and cuts me off in the left-hand lane. I have to slam on the brakes and kind of go on the shoulder a little bit. Well, I just hit it and took off on the shoulder and went around him, got in front of him again and hit it. Well, I guess that enraged him. His stupidity enraged him. He floors it. He's running up behind me. He's like almost bumper to back tire on a motorcycle. And he whips out again and then cuts me off again, like hardcore. Well, I realize at that point, I'm going to lose this fight, right? Like F350 versus XS 750 is not a good fight. I'm going to lose. There's no amount of anything I'm about to do. I can't outrun him. I'm going to lose. And this guy's obviously, he's not had his morning Wheaties. He's not feeling himself. He's being an a-hole. Here's the thing about being an a-hole. There's a high percentage that there's always another a-hole around that will want to take advantage of that. And he had just happened to cut off the other a-hole on 45 twice that morning. So I checked back, gang, 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 got back in traffic, and I followed him. And I followed him all the way past 105 to 45 and 336. North end of the loop in Conroe. And he exited off 336. And I eased back behind a couple cars and I exited behind him. And I followed him down 336 till he pulled into what looked like a little manufacturing shop. Gravel parking lot. A little dust in the parking lot. A bunch of work pickups sitting out there. Brown metal building. I don't remember what the name of the place. Such and such, who gives a shit, machining. And he pulls in, he parks that truck, and when he pulls in, parks that truck, I take that motorcycle and I pull in the first parking space, and then I back up that motorcycle so it's pointed towards 336. And I got off that motorcycle. Helmet, I wore a full bell helmet all the time, black bell helmet. And I walked around to the back of his truck, and he was getting out of his truck. And when he turned around, I hit that son of a bitch as hard as I could. I mean, I drove my right fist into this part of his jaw just as hard as I could. Bounced his head off the door frame, back off the other door frame. He was about my size, decent sized guy, had a mullet and a pair of safety sunglasses on. And I mean, racked his ass, and then immediately turned around and scurried back over and got on my little motorcycle and rode off, leaving him to wonder the rest of his life what the hell happened to him that morning. The motorcycle was easily distinguishable And my helmet had a big old sticker on the back that said, Johnny Cash is a friend of mine. And I got to worrying after I got to work. I was like, well, I sure would be easy to pick out of a crowd right now. So I decided when I went home that night, I need to park that motorcycle for a little while because I was getting out of hand. So I started driving that Honda. Now, y'all know, those of you who've been following the story, is that I had a very suspended license at the time. Very super suspended, you know. I was suspended for tickets in 3 different states, plus I'd had a marijuana charge in Montgomery County, and I had taken a penalty on that. One of the penalties on that is your license is suspended for 6 months to a year, something like that. Problem is the Honda tags are really out of date now. Like noticeable, you know, because Texas would change the colors and the date and all that. And you could look at that Honda from a mile away and tell them tags was out on it. And I still didn't have the title and all that shit sort of straightened out on it. So what I did was I got a compact mirror, like a lady's compact, you know, do their little makeup and all that sort of shit. I found this little square compact mirror. And I took it out of the compact and I used packing tape to tape it to the inside of that windshield right where the registration sticker would be. And I don't know how many times I've seen cops look at it, or people look at it from across if you pulled up to a traffic light, you look over there to look at my registration sticker, all you're going to get is the sun back in your face or something shining up that you can't tell what it was. And that's how I drove that thing for months, man. I cruised that thing back and forth from Conroe to Spring for months. Never got pulled over. Seen several cops look at it like, what the hell's that? You know, and just decided it's a Honda. Who gives a shit, you know? Of course, coming up on that Christmas, you know, they fired me right before Christmas, and then Steve quit on them. They had to hire me right back. But then I was lead man for the contract. And I was having to buy all my own tools and stuff because Steve took all his tools when he left. And Roy was pulling out the contract, and I didn't have Roy's tools to use anymore. So I started having to buy all my own saws and planers and ladders. And that little Honda Accord became my de facto work truck. I had the trunk. I had it really organized. I had little baskets. I had all my tools and my saws and all the stuff in the trunk. And then, I had all my saws and all that stuff up in the front seat. And then in the trunk, I had ripped out all the interior of the trunk, and I could lay the passenger seat down. I was doing a lot of the exterior of the buildings got damaged. We're replacing the foam board and the plywood. And I could open that trunk of that Honda Accord, lay the front seats down, shove 2 sheets of the R12 foam board in there, and then 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood in there. And then just, you know, staple a little red flag on the back where it's sticking out of the trunk. At a work truck, but that's right when them. I don't know if y'all remember when them ladders first come out. It was a ladder that when it was folded up, it was about this tall, but you could unfold it and extend it, and it was like a little 12, 14 foot extension ladder. And I'd bought me one of them a little Werner, little transform. We called it the transformer ladder. I used to keep it tied to the top of the car. You can see me coming in and around Conroe with that old ladder tied on top of that little Honda Accord. Just that was the first work truck for Longmire Maintenance. I had to go start my company and get a DBA and all that good stuff. We called it Longmire Maintenance, and I had some magnetic signs on the doors. And I would run around, and I did so many little side jobs. That car people come, hey man, something clogged up my gutter. You get up there, boy, I go over there, untie the ladder, Get down to it, man. All the time, still riding dirty. Still didn't have my license fixed. I had finally got the title on the Honda, but I hadn't bothered to do any registration on it because I knew I was about to buy me a little pickup truck or something, and so I didn't really screw with all that. I was like, I know I'm gonna buy this little pickup truck. I'm just drive this little Honda the way it is, but I had the title finally on it and all the paperwork. I mean, that little Honda did it all, man. That was a good ass little car. I got no complaint. You'll never hear me badmouth a Honda. I've had a lot of Honda motorcycles and exactly one Honda car, and you'll never hear me badmouth a Honda because that little car, I mean, even for the little weird problems and stuff it had, boy, it's still a good ass little car. I still smile. If I see one of them old Honda Accords now, I still grin when I see it. And they make pretty good little sports cars. People put a little money into them, played with them. Yeah, I finally got the title, but I was still riding like an outlaw, boy. Still had my little compact mirror in there. I think I took that little Honda on some road gigs and stuff. It was a good machine. Y'all know the end of the story already. Some of the stuff that was happening. Of course, we're trying to have a baby and trying to move forward in our life. I bought a little Dodge Dakota, and I kept the Honda for a long time after I had the Dodge Dakota. It was just my backup. I always like having a backup. I kept that Honda for a long time as a backup, but I didn't hardly really drive it. Every once in a while I'd get in it. Me and old Tina would get in it, go run around on Saturday morning. But I really liked my little Dodge Dakota, and I told you when I got ready to sell that Dodge Dakota, I sold it and the Honda same time. I think I sold that Honda for about $1,600. It was like second or third person come look at it. One guy come look at it, told me the transmission was slipping on it, which it wasn't. And he bought the Dodge Dakota, which transmission was slipping. But some dude came and bought that. No, I think it was a lady came and bought that Honda, and it was a little trashed out by then. But I got 1,600 for something about that Honda. I did good on it. That's the only car I had to appreciate and value that much in the short period of time I owned it. I'm racking my brain. Like, is there any Honda stories I forgot to tell y'all? Now I done made myself nervous thinking about that. There's one, but I'm gonna save it to next week. Uh, man, let's do some comments, some testimonials, if you will, babe. Got some good ones this week. I am organized. I did prepare the comments ahead of time. Let's see. What are we at here? Uh-oh. Man, I said I was prepared, and here I am on the wrong thing. There we go. Let's see. At William Phelps, 4411. Funny enough, I really don't mind paying my federal income taxes. Don't mind paying my state income tax, but these mother effing unconstitutional property taxes from counties makes my blood boil. I'd rather pay toll roads and see public schools dissolve. I think the public education system has been a joke for a very long time. You know, I didn't. I had no interest in sending my kids to daycare for thugs. But I think most taxation is theft, but property tax is one of the worst. One of the worst that I remember when I bought my first house and found out I was still going to have to rent it every year. What are you talking about? Like, first of all, who said you own this? You know, it's the property tax is one of those. I'm with you, brother. Makes my blood boil. I don't like paying federal income taxes. Luckily I live in Texas. I don't pay any state income taxes, but we do pay a hefty sales tax about 3 times on everything we buy. So, what do we got? This is a long one. Here we go. At Scott Pender. Oh, Scott, 143. JW, I look forward to these every week and appreciate you inviting into your family's garage and BSing with me every Sunday. This year's been tough. I've had 2 shoulder stability surgeries since the end of May, and it's made it tough to make ends meet. I have a wife and a 13-year-old neurodivergent daughter. Through getting her diagnosis, I found out that I too am more than likely on the spectrum. So dealing with her is tough for me. Plus, I don't do well under pressure and consider myself a bit of a wuss. I work as a machinist, but mostly run a CNC lathe. I've struggled with depression for most of my adult life, but it's gotten worse this year. Sitting at home recovering when you're the only source of income is very stressful. But listen to you, and chatting with you in the feed. Sorry, I'm having to go up and down. Listen to you and chat with you in the feed or the Facebook Lives has helped. I get down on myself a lot, trying to remind myself that my family has a roof, clothes, bed, and food because of me. A lot of men can't say that. Thanks again, Jerry. Whew, that's a tough one, brother. There is nothing that will make you feel less than. We're taught that we are the sum value of our work output as men. We're that is drilled into us. I don't drill it into my son because I don't believe in it, but that is drilled into us from a very young age that as men in this country, you are the value of your work output. And so when you get injured, even if you get injured doing your job, it's hard not to just beat on yourself while you're going through that. And I feel for you, brother. And I certainly can tell you, I've talked a little bit about my youngest being neurodivergent, but it is hard. It's not easy. It's not easy at all dealing with somebody who's wired differently than you, or even wired a little the same as you. I have wondered if I shouldn't go get myself tested a couple times because there's a lot of traits he displays that are things that just kind of got beat out of me, when I was younger. And that's not the way I want to go about it for sure. I struggle. I'm a loud person. I struggle. I yell sometimes, and I try not to do as much of that anymore, but it still happens. But bro, you said it. Your kids are clothed. Your wife is clothed. They're fed. They got a roof over their heads, and all that's because of you. And you'll be back on your feet before you know it. You'll be back feeling like yourself again. I truly believe that. The surgeries and stuff that knock you down, but I just don't believe that's the end of your story. I know depression's no joke. I'm not telling you to buck up or suck it up, but I am telling you that you need to find something that gives you joy. Because whether it's some kind of exercise you can do, even with your shoulder being jacked up, no weight squats in the backyard or anything. Find something that gives you joy. If you got to buy a CB radio and just talk to strangers, yeah, that's going to be the key to getting through that. Because that depression, that's a first class son of 50, but depression gets in people's ears, man. It tells them crazy shit. You can't listen to that monster. Because that monster ain't going to give you no good news. Feel for you, brother, man. I'm glad you're getting something out of this, and I hope you keep tuning in. And I'd really like to see you succeed on the other side of these surgeries and be in a better place. Not a better place like death, obviously. at F Bethesda assholes. First of all, I love your screen name. As a lifelong lover of Bethesda games and also a Stockholm syndrome survivor of Bethesda games. Thank you for that. That gave me a chuckle. What is your opinion on an '08 Crown Victoria Interceptor? The same as my opinion is about every Panther body. Panther bodies are the dirty little indestructible shitbox hot rod that millennials and young Gen X deserve. We got screwed out of a lot of the good ones, and they are the little car we deserve. They're just indestructible, fun little cars with no limit to what you can do with them. Man, yeah, it's a great car, man. Police Interceptor. I don't care if it's a stock Crown Vic. Have fun with it, man. Take it on the dirt track. Bo Duke it off a sand dune. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. It's yours. That's the beauty of those cars. They fulfill a need that outside of that you're gonna have to go to a Japanese car to find. All right. There's our testimonials for the week. Where are we at on time? Oh, we're running a little short this week. Well, that's just the way it is, guys. As much as I sit down and, like I told you, I try to plan these all out, I forget stories. So next week we're going to dive into a collection of those stories I forgot to wrap this whole first season of the Wrecking Yard podcast up. I think this episode goes to show you that if you're really a car person, there's no escaping it. David reignited in me. You guys have reignited it in me over the years with the truck astrology and doing different stuff. And I spent a long time trying not to indulge in my love for automobiles because I thought I needed to be focused on comedy, or I thought I needed to be focused on marriage or whatever. But there's no escaping it. I have this buddy, Rob. And Rob and his dad had a hot rod shop when I was young. Rob's dad was a drag racer, kind of semi-famous drag racer, very successful one. And him and Rob were hellacious engine builders. Rob built some monster engines over the years. Rob's old boy, I told you, had a 355 that would turn $8,000 and just put out horsepower like nobody's business that he put in a Nissan 280Z, boy, and that car was just insanity to ride in. It was a lot of fun. It was like somebody made a better Corvette. But Rob, at some point, a few years ago, and I don't know all the details as why he did it, but Rob sold all his tools. He sold all his cars, all his hot rods. He was building this old 28 Ford Model T and decided he wasn't going to work in automotive shops anymore. He was done with it. He was tired of the pain and crap it had brought to his life. And Rob started doing triathlons and running marathons and shit, and decided to indulge in some other passions he had. He was always an athletic dude. He was a kickboxer. He was always really athletically talented, badass dude. I saw him jump flat-footed into the back of a K5 Blazer with the top off of it and kick a dude in the face one time. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. Rob just grasshoppered his little Italian ass up into the back of this truck and drop kicked this dude right in the mouth. And it's still one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life. But Rob sold all his stuff, man. Said he wasn't going to do this anymore, and he moved out to San Francisco and got real big into bicycles and cycling and doing triathlons. And lo and behold, boy, a few years later, I looked old Rob up, see how he's doing. He doesn't have much interest in connecting with the old group, and I don't blame him. We were all a mess. But I looked him up just to check in on him, see what he's doing. And lo and behold, old Rob's working for the autonomous car division of Google, helping them design autonomous cars. Maybe it's Tesla. I don't know. He's working for one of them out in San Francisco. It's probably Google. And I just thought that was funny, man. Like, you sold all your stuff, you left cars, said you're done with this, and well, sure enough, they just crept back in your life, got a hold of you, and you don't escape cars. They cars bring you back in. I did all the video games I play are about cars nowadays. I still play Fallout, and that's about it. But Forza and Grand Theft Auto and all that is just about the cars for me. I play WRC and I play Mud Runner and Snow Runner, and it's just about the cars and the trucks and modifying things, and you can't escape it. My fire was my car fire was put out a few times over the years, but lots of fire, like my fire was put out a few times over the years. You know, I've heard those stories. Different things happen. Mom died, father-in-law died, fell off a roof, lost a job, got betrayed, whatever. And but every time my fire gets put out, damn if they don't always just leave an ember or something or a coal still burning. And you know what? You know what happens when you leave an ember or coal burning? I'll tell you guys a quick little story. When we first moved into this house, out back in that corner of the yard back yonder, there's this giant old pecan tree. And my wife told me stories when she was a kid. They used to have a swing that hung from that pecan tree, and they would swing on a tire swing out there. Her great grandpa was very proud of that pecan tree. And the time we moved in this house, we'd had a real bad freeze down there in Houston. Y'all probably heard about it. About shut us down for a while, and during that freeze had killed that old pecan tree. And even after we moved in, every once in a while a branch would fall off that pecan tree. Of course, I'd go out there, and if there's anything left of it to harvest, I'd harvest it. And I smoked a lot of meat off wood off that pecan tree. And I always sort of knew one of these days, man, I'm going to have to get that tree cut down. I'm going to have to do something about that tree. Of course, you know, life gets busy. You don't get around to all the stuff you want to. Sometimes money's in the way. And after a while, these crazy little mushrooms start growing out the side of that pecan tree all the way up. But they were kind of pretty, kind of interesting to look at. And constantly, every time I mow, I had to go out there and pick up branches off that pecan tree. And then started dropping some big branches, because them fungus was eating it from the inside out. The branches that started dropping were pretty dried out. They weren't good for much. They weren't good for smoking wood anymore, you know. They basically got big branches of balsa wood. Well, I got in the habit of piling all my brush around the bottom of that pecan tree, because it was just as good a place to pile all my brush anyways. And there was an old doghouse that Rachel's dad had built that was full of roofing materials. And my brother-in-law that had lived here for a little while, who was crazy as shit, decided to move that doghouse up against that pecan tree to get out of his way or something for whatever he was doing that wasn't mowing and taking care of the property, because he didn't do any of that shit. And I got to where I piled all my brush up around the bottom of this pecan tree, but I also had me a little pile of dirt going there that I would use. I had resurfaced some areas around the garage, and I was using that dirt to fill in holes in other places as I needed it. I had me a little burn can out there, a little galvanized burn can. Drill some holes in the bottom of it, and me and my buddy Chicken comes over, works for me every once in a while. We would burn old limbs and leaves and cardboard boxes in that old burn can. And Boy, one day, boy, we just burned for hours. We must have burned every twig and every branch in the yard. Next morning, I go out there, and boy, that old can's finally burnt down, you know. Looks like them coals is all dead. Fire's out. Hell, you can walk up and pick up the can. It ain't even hot to touch no more. So I said, chicken, before we burn any more brush this thing, I want to dump this crap out of the bottom of it. It was pretty full by that point. So we took it over and we dumped it out in that pile of dirt right by my brush pile and right by the old general, the old pecan tree. Sure enough, we dump it out and the coals on the bottom were still active. Well, shit. I said, boy, bring me that water hose. Chicken brings water hose. And we put them coals out. We stomp them with a shovel and all that good stuff. We take them coals out. Me and Chicken take the burn can back. We work the rest of the day burning brush and cleaning up the yard. I take Chicken home at the end of the day and sit out on the porch that night, have myself a couple of drinks after the end of a long day. And Rachel had to get up and go to a doctor's appointment early in the morning, about 9 o'clock in the morning. We go to bed, and next morning she gets up, gets ready to get to her doctor's appointment, and I start stirring around, getting up and got my pajama pants on and a t-shirt on, and she goes out the back door immediately. I like to go out there and open the gate for her before she leaves, so she ain't got to do it. And so I was kind of getting up to go out there and open the gate. She goes out the back door, comes right back in. She goes, "Holy shit!" I said, "What?" She said, "The tree, it's on fire." What the hell? And I walk out here. The brush pile is gone, baby. And I'm talking a brush pile the size of 2 Cadillac SRXs is gone, baby. Brush pile's gone. Doghouse, gone. All it's left is a few smoldering shingles and some roofing nails and the cinder blocks that was underneath it. And the tree is on fire, and the tree has burned all the way from the bottom, one strip, all the way up to the first fork. It is on fire. And I was like, holy shit. And I don't know if you've ever tried to put out a burning hardwood tree, but damn, it takes some time. I was out there with that water hose for 4 or 5 hours trying to put that tree out before I finally got that tree to stop smoking and got that tree put out. Because I left that one little ember. I left that one little coal going. And I thought, boy, I got to get that tree cut down now. Well, sure enough, I didn't get around to that. Year got busy last year. Come July, on my birthday, before that, we had a derecho storm come through Houston and whip up tornadoes all around us. We had a tornado come right through our neighborhood, did damage to the roof, did damage to the garage. My studio got ruined. Had to fix all that. The old general stood up through all of it. Dead ass tree. Stood up through all of it. Tree is dead, been burnt, had mushrooms eating it alive. A month or two after that, Hurricane Beryl hits Houston. Hurricane gale winds. I got trees growing out here. It looked like something out of a Dr. Seuss book because of what that hurricane did to them. Stuff just growing sideways down the fence because of what that hurricane did to them. Old General just stood up through all of it. Didn't do nothing about it. Been burned, mushrooms eating, dead. Then on a very quiet night about a month or two ago, on a very quiet, still, cool night, about 60 degrees, no wind, we're hanging out, and the old general decides it's time to lay down to rest. And that old tree just leans over and it falls in the one place where it can't do any damage to anything in the yard. Anywhere else it fell is going to cost me a bunch of money. It fell in the one place. There's something about that. That's what happens. You leave an ember, you know. Don't let anybody put your last ember out. Just remember, we lay down on our own terms, just like the general. You hear that, Scott? We lay down on our own terms, just like the general. We decide when we've had enough. Don't let anybody put that last ember, that last coal out. You keep that ember safe. Even if they don't know it's burning, that's fine. It's better if they don't sometimes. I'm rooting for you. I'll tell you that, guy. I've told you that a lot of times, and I mean it. I'll never stop telling you that. I'm rooting for you. Hope the obstacles in your life are becoming a little easier to deal with. Hope you're keeping your ember safe. Don't let anybody squash it too much. We lay down when we decide to. We lay down on our own terms. Just be like the general. Y'all have taught me a lot over the last 29 weeks about my value and what I can do with it. And I hope that as we continue this exploration and what we're doing, that I can continue to help you see your value. And when we got to the end of this thing, and do I know what made me a car guy? I ain't got a damn clue. I just know it's in there and I can't do anything about it. And every time I've tried to quash it or walk away from it, it comes back. Was it the wrecking yard? Was it dad? Was it the first time I heard a V8? I don't know. I don't know what did it. But it's there. And I suspect it's there in you as well. I'm JW and I love you. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun. I say, it's all right.